Well, I'm John Conway. I work at Domino Data Lab. Before I was at Domino, I worked at a company called Unify, and before that, a company called Alpine Data. And all of these have been just generally platforms that are targeted at data scientists for kind of a different range of use cases, but all sort of the same idea of centralization. And so over the course of that time, I've thought a lot about kind of what is baked into the assumptions of the value of a data science platform. So I came up with these three. The first is that data science is experiment-based. Data scientists need the ability to just try things out. My experience has been that anytime somebody doesn't have the ability to try things out with the tools that they're given, they're going to find a way to do it the way that they want to do it. The second is that to really do this successfully, both successful and unsuccessful experiments have to be tracked. Those all give value. And then the third is that all of this is only valuable if it's reproducible. So we see a lot of people working in ways that they kind of try things out. They're thinking like, oh, this might be cool. I don't know, we'll see. And then they get pretty far down the line. It is really useful. And then they're unable to really do anything with that work because it's just all done in a way that nobody else can use it. So kind of taking those three down, there's really two main functions of a data science platform. One is to drive process, so that's going to be things like facilitating collaboration, monitoring infrastructure, reproducing work, driving all these processes, and a lot of this stuff can be kind of boring to talk about. I talk about it all the time. It's like people are into it, it's necessary, it's really important, especially when you're thinking about like, we want to put this stuff into production, but it's not really why anybody got into data science. And so I think of this as being like salad. It's like vegetables. It's good for you, but it's fine. The other side of this is enabling research. So this is the stuff that people are really excited about. This is like why people become data scientists. They want to like use a bunch of machines. They want to upgrade stuff. They want to tinker with things and make things run faster, better, use the coolest new stuff. So this is really fun to talk about. And this is also a big function of a data science platform, is to give people a place where they can try things out, try out whatever they want. What we find is that when data scientists are in a platform, like I said earlier, if they can't do what they want to do, they'll start doing it on their laptop, they'll start doing it on their home laptops, they'll find a way to do it, but it won't be the way that most organizations would want them to. And so this is like, I don't know, it's like Guy Fieri, it's fun, and it eats a lot of cool food. And so I'll be showing you a demo today of a couple of things, like kind of interesting things that we've seen done in Domino over the last, most of these are over the last 6 months. So really what we're about is providing a flexible platform for data scientists. So I can show you what this looks like, how we approach this, and a couple of different examples of how this works. So first, the foundation of this is going to be talking about containers. All of this flexibility is really based on containers, being able to customize those containers, make them talk to each other, just do whatever you'd like with those containers. That makes all of this work reproducible, shareable, and since you can kind of customize those containers, install whatever you'd like, they're flexible. The next level from that is Spark and Dask clusters. So really that's kind of like, how do we make all of these containers talk to each other inside of Domino? And then the last two are going to be H2O driverless AI and OpenAI Gym, so that's reinforcement learning in Domino. Those are going to be more of how do you expose different interfaces inside of the platform. And what's really cool about both of those is afterward I'll provide a link. You can go sign up for our trial, and both of those are available in that environment. And so with that, I will get into the demo. So like I said, the first thing that I want to talk about is how all of this work is done in containers. So inside of the platform, we enable users to select a number of different environments. These are all customizable. So the default one that we always roll out everywhere is this Domino Analytics distribution. In this description box, you can see there's a number of different packages, languages, really whatever you'd like to install in this container, you can do. Down here in the Docker settings, this is where that customization really happens. You can see it's basically all bash commands. It's kind of a lot to look at, but it's really flexible. You can install whatever you'd like here. In most cases, it's going to be things that are as simple as like this R install packages that you see here. There's pip install here if you're doing Python packages. If you're kind of depending on the OS, you might do apt-get or yum. Really, you can install whatever you'd like inside of these containers. And so what that means is that when users come into the platform, if they want to, say, spin up a Jupyter notebook or whatever it is, apologies. There we go. So if a user wants to come and spin up a Jupyter notebook, they can just pick that from this box here, spin this up, and this will have all of those packages that are defined inside of that compute environment. And so this is like a pretty simple, straightforward use case of these containers. There's a Jupyter notebook that's installed inside of the Docker container. I guess it's in the image. We spin up the container from that, and then we expose that to the end users. And we don't have to wait for this. I'll show you some real examples. So that's pretty straightforward. Where it gets really more interesting for us, and really where we're looking at going now, is making these containers talk to each other. And so since this environment is flexible, we've been able to do that in a couple of different places. And so I'll show you Spark and Dask both running inside of Domino here. And so what you can see is I have this project. I think it's called, Spark Domino. And here there's 4 different running sessions that we have. So 3 of these are going to be the Spark cluster. So we have the Spark master and 2 workers running here. To spin this up, all that I did was I used this web interface that's provided inside of the platform. I said how many executors I want, and I hit run here. Kind of what's underpinning this is a script that we have that is inside of this project. So we have Spark prep. And this is basically a bunch of calls to the Domino API to spin up these containers, spin up these environments, and have them configured in a way where they can talk to each other. We are working on a way of making this a little more kind of user-friendly. Really what this is to prove out is that when you have the flexible environment, you can figure these things out and make them work. And then eventually we'll build it into something that everybody will use. And over here, you can see the running Spark master. So this is just one of these environments that I have running. So we've exposed this interface through the front end. So if I hit open here, it opens up the Spark master. Really what this is just proving is that this cluster runs, it exists. You can see it has all this Domino stuff outside of it. But just like I said, it has the 2 workers here. And so where this really gets interesting is when you want to start using it as a client. So I have this notebook configured. If I go back to the project, you can see that I have this kind of 4th one. So I have a master, 2 workers, and then I have a sort of a client session here. Really what this is doing is this is just serving as a place where I can submit jobs to the cluster from. So going back to this client session, I can run through this notebook really quick. And it goes here, so you can see it's submitting this job. If I refresh this page, it'll take a second. And I have the running application here. So going through this, really what this is to prove out is that inside of Domino, when you have flexibility, when these users have flexibility, they can do a lot of really cool things like have these environments come up and talk to each other. The second example of this that I wanted to show was Dask running inside of Domino. So for a long time, we had a lot of users asking us about spinning up Spark clusters inside of Domino. What we're hearing more and more is more users want to spin up Dask clusters pretty much in the same way. And so we have one of those running here as well. The backend for this is very, very much the same. I guess in Domino terms, it's the same, where I have a web form here. I say I want to launch the Dask cluster. I say how many, basically how many worker nodes I'd like to run, and then I can spin that up. And then in the same way there's the Spark master, I have the Dask master here. I can monitor that cluster from this interface running inside of Domino. And then I also have a client environment running against this as well. So this is where that, the master runs. And then running through this, I can submit jobs to this, and you can see lots of cool stuff is happening on the Dask cluster. And then I clicked one, and it turned green. And so this is really, again, just to show that users can run this work inside of a Dask cluster. In Domino, users can spin these up, and all of these can be configured. A big benefit of this is really to sort of future-proof the data science platform. So you can get value now with all the tools that you're using today. But as you're looking forward, you can feel good about, hey, if something else comes out, I'll be able to build that inside of Domino because it's all containerized. You can just customize those containers. And we provide the mechanisms for making those things talk to each other in a way where you can scale these out. The other 2 examples that I wanted to show of customization inside of Domino are H2O driverless and OpenAI Gym. And so both of those are available here on our trial version of Domino, so everybody can access this. Again, I'll put up the link in a minute here. But really what's great about this is it's not just about being able to kind of make things on the back end work, but really exposing new interfaces and new ways of working to users inside of Domino. So here I have H2O driverless running inside of a project. I guess if I could take a step back, what I can show you is I have this H2O project here. I go to launch, and I can spin up this H2O driverless interface inside of Domino. From here, I have a data set already preloaded. This is from the project. It's just Iris. It's not super interesting. But what is really cool about this that I can show you is that once this data set's here, I can come down. I can say I want to predict. I will predict the name column here. And this will start going and just train this model pretty much with, I don't know, 3 or 4 clicks. This will get going, and it'll do this automatic training. Of course, this isn't limited to just the Iris data set. You could upload whatever data you'd like to inside of Domino. If there's anything else you'd like to connect to, again, the nature of this is that it's open. So if there's like an API you want to hit, any sort of data source, all that stuff is really easy to do. And then you can expose these interfaces to users so users can really feel like they can do whatever they'd like. The really great thing about this is that, so for example, for this H2O driverless thing, I don't know how to set this up. Somebody else set this up. They put this in the environment. I was able to come in here and just spin up this environment for myself and get going and play with it. So anytime somebody figures out how to do one of these things, figures out how to make one of these things work, it's really easy to share and enable this across organizations, across teams. Even if it's not exactly clear what the use case is, you can explore value, you can explore different ways of moving forward and figure out what you'd want to do without feeling limited by kind of where you're doing that work. You can see here this is training a model. I can go back to experiment so you can see what this looks like once it finishes. And so here there's a kind of a handful of settings, but really what's interesting to look at is you can evaluate this model in this bottom right corner here. There's like all kinds of logs and knobs and things that you can play with here. But what's really cool is just having the freedom to be able to do that really easily. And then the last example that I wanted to go through here is OpenAI Gym. And so that is going to be reinforcement learning that we're running inside of Domino. So if you do access this trial environment and you search for deep reinforcement learning, this is really easy to find. You can just search for it over on the right here. Sorry, one-handed. There you go. So there's a couple examples. You can use mine if you'd like. This is all documented. It has the environment that comes with it. So again, if you just want to get going without having to figure out how to install this on your machine, you can just go inside of Domino. I can tell you from personal experience, I did set this one up. It's not any harder to set up inside of the container than it would be anywhere else, but it's sort of a pain. Just in general, you get this run against, I think Keras is a dependency, then you have to have all of the GPU drivers on the machine and have everything lined up to make this work. All of that, basically, like I said earlier, just has to be solved one time before everybody else can use it. Of course, if you wanted to make upgrades, change any of these things over time, you can do that, but at least that first initial jump, you don't really have to do at all. And so this is actually a really cool example, I think. I have one running inside of this Jupyter notebook here. I don't know if any of you are familiar with this. I'm sure some of you are. But what's kind of fun about it is it renders a lot of images inside of the Jupyter notebooks. So this is one of the, I guess, more famous examples of reinforcement learning where it's trying to balance this stick on this block here. And so it moves across and sort of learns over time how to move in a way where the stick stays vertical for longer. Here, let me start it from the beginning so you can really see it fail at first. You can see this goes through, I think, 1,000 iterations of it. And as this goes on over time, the stick stays up longer. It's kind of a cool thing you can do. And what's, again, nice here is that we have this whole example documented. You can go through this yourself. There's all the code to do this. And OpenAI Gym has a lot of really cool use cases. One of the more famous ones, I think, is they have the team that's building AI to be basically like the best at Dota. So you can play video games with OpenAI Gym. And they provide a lot of examples of how to do that for Atari games. These are all readily available, so I have one of these examples here as well. And so what this does is this learns how to play Breakout. So over time, if I hit run, you can watch it learn how to play this Atari game inside of the Jupyter Notebook. There's a couple changes that you have to make to this code so that it'll render in here, mostly this line here and this line here. And that's more of a Jupyter thing than it is a container or a Domino or a platform thing. But once you get that to render inside of the notebook, it's, I don't know, at least it was pretty satisfying for me to watch the first time this thing get better at playing the Atari game. Cool. Kind of to close out here, a couple of conclusions. One is inflexible data science platforms will likely face adoption issues. We see this all the time. So if somebody feels like they want to do something and they can't do it, what they'll do is they'll revert back to their laptop, and pretty much the whole value of the platform starts falling apart if people aren't doing work inside of it. The second is that it's fun when data science platforms are flexible. You can do a lot of cool things. Third, if nothing else, you can render Atari games in Jupyter notebooks, which I said is actually really fun. There's a ton of examples. They're super easy to find. I would recommend everybody look into that. And then lastly, if you would like to try Domino yourself and run some of those examples, you can go to dominodatalab.com/try. It's really easy to sign up and get going with this yourself.
Okay, great. We're going to do a quick transition because we're going to put up a different computer. But thank you, John.